Good afternoon. Today we are wrapping up our unit 10. We're doing PO63. I can interpret and write inequality statements. So we had been talking about doing the multi-step with our variables on both sides of our equation. So we're shifting gears a little bit. We're shifting into inequality statements. And so instead of using an equal sign, we're going to use those inequality signs. So an inequality compares values that are not necessarily equal. So an equal sign means one side will equal the other side. They will simplify it all the way down. They will be equal. But inequalities might not be equal at all, less than or greater than, or they could be equal or less than, could be greater than or equal to. So less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay? So it might be that number or it might be more. It might be that number or it might be less. So you're not stuck with it. You guys have used less than or equal to, greater than or equal to before. That's what it means. Less than or equal to. That is the symbol.
We've never worked with numbers.
Really? Oh, so this is new for us. Glorious. So let's pay attention and see how we use that, Jonas.
I saw it on the explanation cards too.
Okay. So let's learn about these symbols. So you know the less than and you know the greater than. So those are our main definitions of that symbol. Less than, greater than. There are other words that you might see in a word problem that mean the same thing. So this is important for us as we're looking at word problems. How to read the word problem, we need to know if it's less than or greater than. Jen?
Didn't we do this earlier, like writing all the different words for it? Was that last year?
That was words for adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So we did fill in a chart similar to this to use with word problems. So it's the same concept, different things that we're filling in though. So if we look at that less than, we might also see that written as fewer than. Or you might see below, a number below that. So you know it has to be less than it. So the opposite, if we're looking at greater than, we might see more than or above. So now with our other two symbols, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So less than or equal to. And then this one is greater than or equal to. So if we're saying less than or equal to, we might say the maximum. The maximum you can spend at the store is $20. So you could spend $20 or a number less than that. Can't go over it because you only have a 20. So your maximum that you can spend is 20. Can't go above it because you don't have enough money. You can go below it. You could spend $15 and then you get $5 change. So you can be below it. You can be less than, or you could be equal. You could be at that maximum of $20. At most, you can spend is 20. Oh, I'm combining that. At most. So at most, you can spend this amount. At most, you can have 5 candy bars. You can have less than 5, but you can't go over. You've only got 5 candy bars left at home. Don't eat them all at the same time. But you can eat up to that 5. Can't go over because we don't have it. Or you could say no more than. You can get no more than 2 extra credit points on the test. You might get less. You might get 2 extra credit points, but there's not the possibility of getting any more. So you can get no more than that. So we know it's less than or equal to, because you can go right up to that number and get that number, or a number less than it. So then if we're looking at greater than or equal to, we're looking at the minimum. The minimum number that you need to win is 500. If you get less than that, you're not going to win. You need at least 500 or more to win the game. You need at least 500 points to win. Okay, so that's your minimum number would be 500. You could get to 500 and win the game. You can get to 510 and win the game. Your minimum number that you have to reach. So if less than or equal to is at most, what would greater than or equal to be?
At least.
At least. You have to get at least 70 points out of 100 to pass the test. That's 70%. You have to get at least 70 points to pass the test. You can get higher and pass the test, but if you get lower, you don't pass it. If less than or equal to is no more than, greater than would be no less than. Okay, so it is important to know these keywords to know what you're doing. Is it greater than? Is it less than? Is there an equal sign under it? Can you get that number? So this is important. Put your calculator away. Put whatever's in your hand away. It's not only, I'm not looking at you. It's distracting me as I'm trying to teach. It's distracting people at your table. When I say put it away, put it right in your backpack so we're not tempted to play with it. Thank you, sir. So, can I erase this part so we can see how we use this?
Yeah.
All right. So now we can graph our inequalities. So here's something important to know. If it is, oops, need a little more space. If it is less than or greater than, our circle is going to be open. If it is less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, our circle will be closed in that we're going to use. Okay? So if their equal sign is under it, you fill in the circle when we're graphing. If it is not equal to it, if you cannot be at that number, it has to be less than that number or greater than that number, our circle is open. It's not filled in. This is how we graph these. So you'll see here, x is less than 8. So we go to the 8. It is an open circle, and it's less than 8. So we're at the 8, and we go less than. It can be any number smaller than 8. It's an open circle, so we know it cannot be 8. Here we have x is less than or equal to 2. It's got that equal sign under it, so it's that filled in circle. It's less than, so we know it can be any number that's smaller than 2. So our arrow goes to any number smaller than 2. For this one, it says x is greater than or equal to, so you'll see that our circle is colored in over that 0. It can be 0. So it's circle, it's called all colored in. And it's greater than 0, so our arrow goes to the right. Is that making sense? The circle is always above the number. If it can be equal to that number, you fill it in. If it cannot be equal to that number, it's an open circle. Your arrow points in the direction of what your numbers can be. If it's less than that number, it goes to the left. If it's greater than that number, it goes to the right. So now we need to write each inequality statement a second way. N is greater than 11. The number has to be bigger than 11. But now we're going to use it as, okay. So we're going to use the inequality symbol, but the opposite one. So if it says N is greater than 11, how can I flip that to be saying, to still mean the same thing, but it's opposite, yeah? So if we're going to put less than, but N is still a number that is bigger than 11, how do I use that less than symbol? Gus? 11 is less than N. It means the same thing. N is greater than 11. 11 is less than N. You can read it going both directions. So we're going to write it using our opposite inequality symbol. So we're flipping where variable is and where the number is. We can write it using our verbal phrase with our words. We could say N, our original statement, N is greater than 11. So one is using the opposite inequality symbol, one is using your words. And our third way, graph it on a number line. So we're going to do something like up here. We're going to make our number line. What number am I going to put underneath my hashtag? 11, because that's our number in here. Is my circle going to be filled in or open? Open, because there's no equal sign. So an open circle, which way do I want my arrow to go, Emmeline? To the right, because our number is greater than 11, so any number bigger than 11. So for each of these, you have to write all three. The opposite inequality symbol, so you're flipping it. If N is greater than 11, then 11 is less than N. You're going to write using your words, N is greater than 11, and you're going to do your graph on the number line. So you have to decide, is that circle open or closed? And which direction is our arrow going? So it's easy to say that if N is greater than 11, look at here, our arrow is pointing to the right because our inequality is pointing to the right. We cannot rely on that when our N is on the right side because here that arrow is pointing to the left, but it's still N is greater than 11. So you have to really see if 11 is less than N, 11 less than N, so that means N has to be bigger. You have to be able to read it the other way. So if your variable is on the left side here, your arrow is going to point the same direction as the inequality. But if your variable is on the right side, then you have to know it goes the other direction. Depends on what your inequality is. Oh, gosh, yeah. We'll do another one. If I need to do my first one, writing it using the opposite symbol, N is less than -2. How would I write that using the opposite inequality? If N is less than -2, Alexis? Say it louder for me. -2 is greater than N. Because n is less than -2, so -2, oh my goodness, I said it and I drew it wrong. -2 is greater than n. So if you have less than up here, you have greater than down here, but you have to flip where your numbers and variable are. So instead of n first, we have -2 first. Do you have a question? What?
For like the writing one, can you say like n is like less than?
But, so n is less than what, Aiden?
-2.
Yeah, you can exactly say that. Is that the only verbal phrase we can use? No, we had all those other words. You could say, n is fewer than -2, or n is below -2. It all means the same thing. So I have one more thing, so I have to show 3 things each time. What do I have to do? Emily?
First you draw, like this is graphing. So first
Yeah.
you draw a line, then you put the dash in the middle, you put -2.
How do I know I put -2 on there? Because that's what's in my inequality is -2.
And
Then what?
you circle like, you don't put a circle like,
Why do I know I'm putting an open circle at the -2?
because it's not, it can't be equal to.
Yeah, because it can't be equal to it. So then what else, Emily?
And then you draw the arrow going to
Why am I drawing the arrow going to the left?
the left.
Because n is less than -2. Less than goes to the left, greater than goes to the right. If you have your variable first. It flips when your variable isn't first. You have to really think about it. N is less than -2. So when you're graphing it, you could if they give you the variable second, you can flip it so that variable is first, so you know which way to point the arrow. Are these 3 steps making sense to us?
Yeah.
Okay. This is not the only thing that we're doing today. Not just, this is a 2-page. So you have to do all 6 of these, doing our 3 steps for each one. Using the other inequality sign, using your verbal phrase, using your words, and then doing the graph. Then we have it as word problems. Write each situation as an inequality statement and then graph it on the number line. Put your hand down. We're not being silly with our fingers, just put your hand down. Second time I've been distracted by you. So let's look at our first word problem. Your mom gives you $20 for a trip to Target. Show how much money you can spend at Target. First thing I have to do is write my inequality statement. How would I write that? Kids. So your variable would be n. Which inequality do I want to use? Let him finish.
Greater than or equal to 20.
So what we're saying here is I can spend $20 or more at Target. Chance, how much money do we have to spend at Target according to our statement?
$20 or less.
Oh, well, that's not what you told me to write. We have to be careful. Mom gives you $20 to spend. You cannot go over 20. So it's not going to be greater than. It's going to be less than or equal to. You can spend the full $20. You cannot go over 20. Evan, take your binder and move to the front, please. So that's our first step, writing the inequality statement. Then we have to graph it on our number line. How do I do that? What would my graph look like, Gus?
Draw the line. 20
Why is my circle filled in?
Because it's equal, it
It can be equal to it.
and then the arrow is going to left.
I'm gonna go to the left because I can spend $20 or less. So a number smaller than 20. Let's do one more. You bring your dog inside when it's colder than -15 degrees. Show the temperatures at which your dog is indoors. So what is my inequality statement I'm gonna write? Aiden.
N is greater than -15.
So what I'm saying here is that the temperature is 10 degrees. I'm gonna bring my dog inside because it's too cold outside. Would I bring my dog in if it's 10 degrees outside? When you bring your dog inside when it's colder than -15. What do you think colder than relates to in those terms that we used in our table? Tatum? Less than. So do we want to be greater than? No. If it's colder than, it's less than 15 degrees, -15 degrees. So we would say, bring our dog in when it's less than -15 degrees. When it's colder than, does it say when it's -15 degrees or less? Does it say -15 degrees or less? No. So not at -15 degrees, but when it's less than, colder than -15. So there would be no equal sign. It has to be less than -15. Question, or you want to do the next step? Yes.
Could you write it -15 is greater than n, or do you have to do n is less?
We have talked about doing it either way. They mean the same thing. -15, it will always be greater than n. N could be -20, n could be -50. Whew, hopefully we're not living at -50 because that is gold. That's when we have no school. It's so cold. But -15 greater than n works. Either way, our graph is going to look the same. Because we're gonna have our graph, we're gonna have our -15. Is my circle going to be filled in or open? Open, because there's no equal sign. And we know it has to be less. -15 is the biggest number, and n has to be smaller than that. So we know n has to go this direction. No matter which way we write our inequality statement, it means the same thing. Our variable is smaller. Now, Mr. Schultz did use different variables because it doesn't matter which variable you use. He used the T for temperature. Does it matter which variable we use? No. You put a variable, is it bigger or is it smaller? Okay. So you can write it either way, that your variable, your n, is less than -15 or -15 is greater than n. It all means that that number has to be smaller than -15. Does that make sense? Any questions on how we're doing this work? Remember, this is our last objective, and this is a power objective. So we need to remember how to do this as power objective. And tomorrow we're going to review the rest of our unit to remind ourselves how we did those multi-steps. So we're ready for our test. Real test is on Thursday. So you're gonna make sure you finish the front page where you're writing out all three ways. Make sure you finish this page, really reading those words. What is it telling us? Is our number going to be smaller than or bigger than? Okay, is it equal to? Do we throw that equal sign underneath? So really pay attention to what the words are telling you. For my friends at home, we hope you are well, and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.